Alternative public clouds, are they just wishful thinking? Paul, what's your kind of immediate take on
I think I look at it in two ways. It's probably wishful thinking that they are going to seriously dent the hyperscalers market.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's going to happen. But I think, is there a role for them? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are one or two key things you sort of look at when you look at, what are the things that they're sort of trying to position themselves on. And I mean, the obvious one is data sovereignty and the whole sort of issue of, security of your data in a local environment, which I think they all play on quite heavily. The other one that's interesting, and is that they've really all put a real push on the simplicity of the pricing model.
Mm-hmm.
They've all sort of linked into the fact that actually there is that many things you can do on AWS and GCP and Azure that it's confusing. And so, a novice like me looking at the websites of AWS, you lose the will to live trying to, work your way through it. Whereas you go on to some of these, websites of these guys, and they've got a very, what appears to be at first a quite simple message about transparency of pricing and simplicity of pricing. So there's, those are the two. The third thing that I picked up on looking at all the sort of smaller cloud was that they've come from a very different background. If you look at OVH Cloud, you look at Civo in the UK or Ionos in Germany or and others. All the one common theme is they were all web hosting companies.
Right.
That's where they came from.
Right.
They might have changed their name and they might have assimilated one or two other, but they've come from a web hosting environment, and they've got quite large bases of small and medium-sized enterprises.
Yeah.
So for the small and medium-sized enterprises, in terms of moving from web hosting to hosting servers to cloud, is a sort of no-brainer step. It's the relationships are there, they're local. The pricing seems to be fairly simple, and they're claiming they're cheaper. We haven't done enough work probably to look and say, are they really cheaper?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on that point specifically, and I'll just come back to some of the earlier points as well, but just on that point specifically, is it cheaper because you're doing more simplistic things on these alternative clouds and you're buying a very specific package? Because in a public cloud, you've got all sorts of crazy services and stuff that you can make use of, so you can go a little bit wild on various things and experiment and innovate and so on. Whereas in these clouds, I mean, there's certainly none of that kind of, bedrock type, Amazon Bedrock, AWS Bedrock type of thing, or, sort of, Azure's sort of AI and open AI and all the studios around that, all the development tools, and you're not going to get that. It's just not going to happen.
No.
Right. And as we said, it's, they can't compete at that level. And then as I was going to say, one of the other subheadings for me was, is competing against Amazon, Microsoft, and Google a waste of time, really? So, is it because, are they cheaper? And there are certain things you can pick out. So, for example, Civo, my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding from what I was told earlier this year when I actually interviewed the CEO of Civo at the State of OpenCon conference, SUCON conference. One of the differentiators for them was that the control plane of Kubernetes clusters is not something that they charge for. So their XKS service, or whatever Kubernetes service, versus the AKS, EKS, GKE type of services from the big three, they don't charge for the for the control plane, only the nodes in your Kubernetes cluster. So that's, I mean, if that's still around as an option, then that's that's distinguishing yourself, and that would potentially make it cheaper. But is it cheaper, as we said, because they offer only certain types of services? You can't go wild and experiment with all these other things and rack up your bill as you might do in the public cloud, as well as you get this email package, you get this DevOps package, you get this, I don't know, file management package, or Microsoft Office, or 365 package, or whatever type of thing, and you're just purchasing those types of services that are very contained, specific, is very packaged and wrapped up.
I think if you look at instance pricing, server instances, storage instances, etc., some of them look cheaper than AWS and Microsoft Azure and GCP. They do on a per instance basis. But I mean, I did quite a lot of work with OVH Cloud over the last few years, and they were very slow to start delivering the sort of wraparound services, the platform as a service piece. They were hosters, and they're very, very efficient at using from an infrastructure as a service point of view. They're very, very efficient delivery. I mean, from their water-cooled data centers, they don't use air conditioning in data centers. It's all water-cooled, through to building building their own servers and repurposing their own servers. They had a great way of doing it. So that from a cost point of view, they would keep the basic infrastructure as a service very, very cheap, but they were slow to get into PaaS. They were really well, and they made some missteps too. vCloud Air, I think, was probably the biggest misstep they made in terms of thinking that they could pick up an awful lot of VMware customers that way and push out, and then basically VMware left them hanging, effectively. So I think if they stick to their knitting, if you like, that and their sort of mid-market, and to an extent, there's probably in public sector there is a market for from a sovereign data point of view for them. But if they're trying to go cheap and say they're cheaper, I mean, AWS can probably afford to ignore them at the moment. It's not a threat.
Yeah.
But I think AWS, if they decided to turn their fire on them from a cost point of view, would make life very, very difficult for them. So yes, they are probably cheaper per instance at the moment, but it's not big enough market share for AWS to go, oh, that's a problem. If it was, they'd soon squash them.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at someone else like Nextcloud, which I think is German based. I mean, just looking at the products that they have, there's Nextcloud Files, so sync and share stuff, Groupware, so your calendar, contacts, email, Nextcloud Assistant, which is kind of a private, AI assistant. That's kind of your private GPT, chat GPT. Nextcloud Talk, which is kind of video conferencing and direct messaging and so on. And then Nextcloud Office, it's real-time document collaboration. So this is what I'm saying about kind of the services that you get in some of these are, very packaged. They're a particular topic, like office productivity or file sharing, or your own private chat GPT kind of AI platform or assistant and things like that. Unlike, the kind of the floodgate of stuff that you get from AWS and others. We can just go in all sorts of crazy directions. Everything from sort of you're bringing your old crap monolithic applications into the public cloud, all the way to function as a service and serverless on the other end, right? So sure, you can maybe do some of these services in these kind of smaller players, and yeah, you can do things like sovereignty, as you said. There are areas to look at, so things like data sovereignty or resource, you sort of have a sovereign cloud sort of approach, really. So whether that's kind of in the EU bloc or in the US or whatever it is, you can also achieve that.
Yeah, it's for me. We've sort of created our own problem by calling everything cloud. You know, these are not what you were describing from Nextcloud is not really genuine cloud. It's
No,
it's
yeah,
applications. They're serving applications.
yeah, yeah.
They're
It's
not,
kind of it's the new version of managed services. It's kind of
yes,
managing a service for
yeah,
you. You have a SaaS
yeah,
connection into it through your web browser or whatever, and that's it. And you just make use of
yeah.
that.
I
I
mean,
mean, some of the others, like Sevo and I think some of the other players are offering even bare metal, right?
yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, um, yeah, how many people would want to use that, and how does that work? Even at a PaaS layer, how many PaaS services are there, like a database as a
Yeah,
service,
yeah.
for
I
example?
mean, it's. I think if you look at the CEVO site, it's what, three databases
Mm,
that they mention. And they're the big one. That's fine. But I think it's a mid-market focus. It's a soft. It's a small and mid-market focus. Uh, People thinking, I just want something that's a little less scary.
yes, and I mean, people like Nscale. So I was at the Cloud Summit a couple of months ago. I attended that in London. By the way, there's again a review of that coming up on the channel. If it's not out yet, do look out for that.
And
But
that will have more than a PG rating as well, I think.
I'm sure it will. So at the Cloud Summit, N was it N Scale? Can't remember the name. N Scale, I believe, presented. So N Scale is another of these sort of alternative clouds, and the guy was talking about come and run your generative AI models on our cloud. Fine. A lot of people are doing that. Even T Systems does that. We offer that service on our cloud. So you can certainly do that, right? But the point is how many people want to do that? How many people want to build their own LLM, platform and train and do all that kind of, inference and the RAG and all that stuff? Not many. I think how that market is going to go, as I wrote about earlier this year, I did an article on this, and I think Gartner kind of agrees to a point in terms of that, although the outcome is still yet to be seen because people are still doing proof of concepts and pilots so
Mm.
far of AI sort of projects and AI platforms. A lot of people are going to say, "I love to use AI, but I'm not in the AI business. I don't want to train my own model. I don't want to, I just want to upload all my rubbish data into a model and let the model sort it out, and I can just use the model." So I would prefer to have a SaaS solution versus going and building my own and maintaining it and securing it and ensuring that the data is sovereign and blah 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 blah.
It's interesting, they're not quite small small
Well, there is that as well. There's SLMs as well.
there's SLMs. It's
Yeah,
somewhere in between, but there's the corporate language model, isn't there?
yeah,
And you say delivering a crap into them to well, some people might say, actually, I really want very, very focused information, built on, you know, coming back to our, data discussion we've just had. If I've got an awful lot of data in there, why don't I just put that into a medium-sized model and get it to work? Yeah, because it's private. It's almost like your private language, your private model. How do I do that? So I think there are places where that could play. I mean, the one things that I think it was the Sevo site that they were talking about. If you want to run, we can have GPU only capabilities,
yeah,
and
yeah. They all offer bare metal. Yeah,
yeah, and but you're sort of going again from a scale point of view. You're going to find it difficult. And are they the latest, greatest GPUs? Because we know there's a problem on delivery of
oh yes,
supply chain problems on
yes,
on GPUs,
Yes.
and you're going to find yourself being outbid, if you like, by Amazon and whoever,
Open AI and people like that. Yeah.
OpenAI, everybody else going for these
All the
GPUs,
other players. Yeah.
storing them all up. So, yes, you might be providing a second generation or third generation GPU, while the big boys are on seventh or eighth generation GPUs. It's that sort of problem I think they're going to face. There's a place for it, but and OVH Cloud I think have come as close as anybody. If you and we've sort of ignored Oracle Cloud and IBM's cloud to an extent. Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Because they're very much providing a service for their own existing customers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
despite everything that they've talked about. So, but I think OVH
That's quite
is interesting
incestuous.
as well. Is that they've relied on a certain French quirkiness, and the French love them. And you go to very enthusiastic sort of get-togethers of thousands of French developers, all thinking this is really, really wonderful. But outside that, they've struggled to really get traction.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, if they were to kind of go belly up tomorrow or something, I think the French government would be kind of I feel sorry for you, huh? Kind of that'll be their sort of approach.
Yeah, there would be a lot of sort of cries of anguish. It's a bit like when as English language has crept into the French language. And they've had this sort of society of trying to protect the French language. It's protect our local sort of cloud. I mean, you've got Gaia X. Look at Gaia X, which has really been run into the into the ground. Really, it's a slow walking pace. It's just.
Yeah, but I mean, okay,
And,
so
and I think that's the challenge they've tried lots of different ways to try think they can compete with the hyperscalers. The answer is you can't. Do something different.
yeah, and I have a slightly different view on kind of the AI thing, because I think what's happening, and we're seeing this already, is that there's two things happening in that what I said earlier about sort of most people adopting a SaaS solution for their AI. There's now models that are appearing, or platforms that are appearing, that are sector specific, market specific. So there's like one for health, there's one for legal, there's one for manufacturing, there's one for marketing, there's one for food production, whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's, I think, where those companies who want to use AI but don't want to do it themselves, they're not going to go to necessarily one of these alternative clouds, right? Because they don't have the tech savviness to go to the big three, but they also will not necessarily go to these alternative cloud players, because they're going to say, I just want to upload my data somewhere and start using it tomorrow. I want to upload it on the weekend, and on Monday I want to come in and start using it. And that's what I want to do. And the only way you're going to do that as quickly as that, not literally that quick, but faster than other ways of doing it, would be to put it into a SaaS model, not build your own and train it and customize and rag it and look after it and update it, and it's all open source and it's all over the place, and and so on. So that's one thing. The other thing is a lot of the so-called open source models from the likes of Meta and so on are not open source. They're paying a lot of lip service to open source, but they're not. So buyer beware if you're going to look at that stuff. The third point is the likes of Mistral, Anthropic, and others. So these actual kind of really key players, and obviously even OpenAI, these really key players in the generative AI space, they've all had investments from Microsoft, from AWS, from Google, and others as well. So even they are now competing for those GPU resources.
Yeah.
And when you have, and again, we've picked up on Intel, last time around and previously, when you had people like Intel dragging their feet, they've been, I think one of the articles I read said Intel has been in the GPU market for 2 years and they've got zero to show for it. They had nothing. Only the Gaudi chips that they produced recently were kind of their first foray, their first attempt into the proper sort of AI and GPU market. But again, too late. Nvidia's like a 3 trillion coming up to $4 trillion valuation company. They're well ahead of everybody. They're manufacturing their stuff for everyone. So now you're saying to me you want to put your chips on with your tools and everything else, and you want me to develop specifically for your chips versus the huge ecosystem that Nvidia has built up. So again, I just don't see how that's going to work, and I don't see how these alternative cloud providers can actually say, well, just we've got GPUs from Intel, or even if they get them from Nvidia, just bring all your stuff and build it on us. I don't want to build anything. I want to use it, but I don't want to build anything. That's the point.
Yeah, and those that do want to build something will go to AWS, or
because they're already in there.
It's already in there.
Microsoft will probably say, "Oh, just use our, OpenAI and Azure Studio and
Yeah.
Bedrock from AWS."
It's the big weakness of the clouds is the wraparound of additional ecosystem stuff, let's call it that, is much, much less. So, I mean, they are glorified, application service providers. Is the way it's going to work.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
You're
So no, that's fine. Yeah, no, I'm just so my phone was buzzing. So yeah, so I agree. So I think the future is not that rosy. I would still like them to be there because they do cater for certain type of customer and certain sort of things that customers maybe may want. So whether it's like sovereignty or I don't know, something like that. But they can't do. I mean, when the guys at Nextcloud, sorry, at Nscale, don't want to get the names wrong. Nscale at the Clouded Summit, when he said, "Oh, we have GPUs, so come and build your model on it," I was like, how many people want to do that? Even if you have like 100 customers who want to do that, yeah. I mean, what kind of they're SMEs or they're customers that don't know what they're necessarily doing. Like I said, everybody's still, still doing POCs and pilots, right? And they're slowly realizing that they can't really do this sort of stuff themselves. Because it was another article I picked up on this very topic that said, "Oh, people are moving their models, into private cloud because the public cloud is too expensive." Yeah, but they're going to find it equally difficult. And 2-3 months time, there's going to be another article saying, "Oh, doing it in private cloud is too much of a headache. Security, sovereignty, blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff, is going to affect us again." And then eventually, I think they're going to come around to it in the second half of 2025. They're going to say, "SaaS, we should use SaaS. We should also put all us and just make sure that the SLA says yes, it's all sovereign and everything is only going to go out to the EU block or whatever, and we should just use SaaS." Because there's somebody actually doing it for our market sector.
I mean, you want to say to the sort of market sectors out there, that medium and small and medium-sized market that's out there, is SaaS equals software house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fundamentally what we're saying.
Yes.
It is. And there are people running SaaS-based services that have developed it from the old software applications they had. They've had to convert them to run as a SaaS service. It might not be genuine cloud as you and I know it, but it's as a service. And that's where these are going to survive. They're not going to survive trying to fight on the infrastructure as a service approach. They're not going to survive on the PaaS approach either. So, and as you say, the ecosystems around the big hyperscalers now are such that it's, you need to find a specific industry application, make it a SaaS service, and sell the hell out of it that way.
Yeah. So I think my view is, and like I said, don't get me wrong, I like the idea of offering alternative solutions and this sort of the David versus the Goliath kind of sort of thing.
I think you and I have spoken about this in the past, that actually it needs some seismic shift in technology and or business model and or to get the dominance of the hyperscalers put under any sort of a threat at all. This sort of incremental stuff, oh, you can run it on mine, compared to AWS or to Azure. It is, wishful thinking, guys. It needs to be, there needs to be some sort of paradigm shift, either in technology terms or in business terms, that somebody sees and comes and says, oh, and the guys at, the hyperscalers do what happens to most companies is they're a little blindsided by something new coming along because they think they're invisible, invincible, not invisible. They probably think they're invisible as well. But
yeah. Well, I mean, certainly the big three, hyperscalers are not invisible because they have been dragged in front of the DOJ or CMA or whatever it is. And there was an article I think I picked up recently, which certain IT industry pundits also were using as a, see, everybody is repatriating from the public cloud. But, if you're put in front of a government body or organization or committee or something, of course you're going to say that. Of course you're going to say, well, look, everybody's repatriating. Here's a survey or whatever, that says everybody's repatriating. So see, not everybody's with us, Mr. President, or whatever. So I think, yeah, I think these public cloud providers, these alternative public cloud providers, have an identity crisis. They can't limp on from, oh, look, AI is happening, so let's offer some GPUs to everybody. Oh, look, XYZ is now trendy. Let's offer that as a service. They need to find something that will say, this is what we do. We do it very well. We do it much better and cheaper than those guys, guaranteed. Come and put your business or service that you want. Come and make use of our cloud. And I think that will establish them as a real alternative. And they can be in a kind of a alliance, if you like, the Alternative Clouds Alliance or something. There you go. I've just invented the name for you guys. They can kind of all be together, all, standardize on some stuff like APIs, standardize on observability tools, standardize on, automation tools, infrastructure as code tools, and things like that. That would be really cool. That would really give them and it will give customers an alternative. And what you'll start seeing happening is people like Nscale will merge with Nextcloud. Ionos will buy Leaf Cloud, and so on.
Yeah, and there's been various attempts over the years, not necessarily in cloud, for small and smaller players like that to try and first collaborate into some sort of federation or it. And I've never seen one that's really worked. Yeah, you're right. And some of them will buy each other, buy one of the other ones in there. But fundamentally, getting them all with their own businesses to trust and work collaboratively with each other all the time, they can do it for a little while. And there was a sort of with the sort of growth of Equinix and the growth of digital realty and people like that, some of the smaller ones tried to band together. Smaller co-location providers tried to band together into some sort of loose federation of, that they could offer the same sort of scale and network and all those things. And it just never took off because they actually were slightly too competitive with each other.
Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.